Hello, everybody who is logging on and joining us or popping up in your feeds. We are live streaming to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now Twitter. So to everybody who is popping in, hello and welcome. This is Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow, and this is our fairly regular This Week with Mallory. And believe it or not, this is going to be the very last live stream of the year, and also the very last live stream of our term. It is really, really hard to believe that it has already been 4 years since I first took office after the 2018 election. So we wanted to use this live stream and do something a little bit different. Yes, we are going to update you on work that we did this year, but also talk about some of the highlights of the past term, because there is a lot that we all went through together. There's a lot that we accomplished, and it's a moment to reflect, not only just on 2022, but on the entire 4 years that we have had together. So for anybody who's joining us, friendly reminder, this is live. We do have an opportunity for live Q&A. So regardless of what platform you were on, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, I think if you are on Twitter, you have to click into Periscope to be able to have this functionality work. But you can ask any question, regardless of what platform you're on, by typing a question into the comment section of that platform. If you are using a username that isn't obvious what your actual name is, please type your actual name and what city you live in so that we can make sure to prioritize constituent questions first. But we will go ahead and get into it. So 2022 highlights. What a year. This year, we introduced 9 bills, and it included these highlights. Senate Bill 947. This has been a question that many of you have consistently asked on these live streams, is what are we doing to fix Michigan's auto no-fault reform that passed in 2019? So Senate Bill 947 is a bill as part of a legislative package that I introduced with Senators Chang and Geis that would address some of the immediate and necessary needs of Michigan residents who survived catastrophic car accidents. Combined, this package would give family units and their support systems more flexibility to provide reimbursable care, eliminate the use of standards not derived from medical professionals that are currently being used to deny treatment, and refine the term, quote, medical treatment, unquote, to carve out certain products, services, and accommodations from the fee cap system. Senate Bill 856, this legislation is part of a larger red flag legislation package, which would allow a judge to issue an ERPO after the court considers testimony, documents, and other evidence in support of a request. And red flag laws are those that would allow a judge to order the temporary confiscation of firearms from somebody who is deemed an immediate risk to themselves or others. These laws have been implemented in a number of other states, and they are proven effective. They are proven to work. Once an order is issued, law enforcement could then take temporary possessions of these individuals' firearms, and the individual will be prohibited from purchasing new firearms while the order remains in effect. This bill has been introduced a number of times. We've introduced it multiple times, but the work on this package has gone back even before I took office with Robert Wittenberg, who's now the Oakland County Treasurer. When he was in the State House, he created the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus and worked for years on this bill package and other bill packages to ensure that he was working with Sheriff Bouchard here in Oakland County to build in many layers of due process, increasing penalties for false reporting. So as we head into a new term, I'm very hopeful that this bill package will finally move forward. Senate Bill 859 that we introduced this year this one is much more lighthearted. So this bill would expand the use of school sinking funds to include an allowable purchase of electric school buses and accompanying infrastructure. Currently, Michigan school districts are unable to use their sinking funds as a mechanism to purchase these vehicles. leaving them with few other financial resources to do so. And people who are on school boards and superintendents of schools in our district requested this. They asked for it specifically because they want to take advantage of some of the programs that are out there to pilot electric school buses. Several school districts in Michigan have already begun replacing costly, outdated diesel fuel-based buses and electric fleets. The use of EVs has the potential to reduce long-term transportation costs for school districts, as well as toxic pollutants in the air that our children breathe while riding the bus to school. And this is something that I think about this visual all the time, particularly for school buses. If you think about the lineup at the end of the school day, the lineup of school buses, the lineup of kids waiting to get on the school buses, think about the height of most kids and where that tailpipe is on a school bus. So there is a lot of air quality issues that is right in kids' faces. And EV school buses are one way that we can eliminate that pollutant and improve air quality for kids at a really pivotal moment in their lives. There are also federal programs right now to encourage investment and purchasing of EV school buses. So this is one bill that would allow us as a state to take advantage of these federal funds and bring down the costs for school districts and really capture as much of those available federal dollars as possible by expanding what school districts are allowed to do with their sinking funds. All right, Senate Bill 860. This is something that we talked about for a while. So you all, everybody watching this, we all went through and are still going through the ramifications of the COVID-19 pandemic. And one thing that the pandemic revealed was how sensitive our government really is. Interestingly, there was a good story in The Atlantic months ago about how there was a similar conversation in the wake of 9/11, where, it really ground government to a halt. And it made it painfully obvious that we didn't have plans in place for government, state government, and the federal government to really continue its work if we're not physically in the building. But beyond that, I gave birth almost 2 years ago now, believe it or not. Oh my goodness. And decided to take a leave of absence. Legislators, actually, we do not have a policy for sitting legislators to take maternal or paternal leaves. I am only the second sitting senator in state history to give birth while in office, with Stephanie Chang, our current colleague, being the first. And a lot of you brought up concerns about what it meant when I wasn't physically at the Capitol while I was recovering during that leave and learning how to be a mom, and what it means for representation if your legislator is not there and taking votes on your behalf on bills. So I worked with Adam Ollier, my colleague, who's also currently an active duty member of the military. And we introduced legislation that would allow for proxy or remote voting when a member of the legislature is unable to physically attend session due to active military duty, a medical condition, or an immediate family member requiring the senator or the legislator to provide care, including maternity and paternity leave. Now, I know that there's a lot of sensitivity. You want your legislator to be there in person. We don't want this to be abused. So our thinking was that this would be allowable with the approval of legislative leadership, so that if you've got a family member who had a stroke, if you have somebody that you need to attend to urgently, we want people in these roles who understand the lived realities of caretaking duties. I think we have to make concessions so that you can continue to have a voice, so that, even if I'm at home with a baby recovering shortly after giving birth, I could vote via proxy via another member and still have your vote counted on bills as they move through the legislature. All right, that's a deep dive on some of the bills we've introduced this year, but over the past 4 years, we have introduced 49 pieces of legislation that I have been proud to work on throughout my first term as your senator. And I'm really, really proud that we introduced legislation on every single issue that I ran on when I ran for office for the first time in 2018. Some of the highlights: creating the Michigan Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council, pushing innovation in the auto industry, and making Michigan a leader as we pivot into clean mobility. I also also introduced legislation multiple times to ban so-called conversion therapy, which is the practice of trying to forcibly change somebody from LGBTQ into somebody who is straight. We know that this is just scientifically not possible and incredibly damaging. So, for members of the LGBTQ community who have been subjected to so called conversion therapy, we see the rates of anxiety, depression, and attempts at suicide skyrocket. Similar legislation has been signed into law in, I believe, 13 other states, signed by both Democratic and Republican governors. Another bill that we have championed over the past 4 years, making Election Day a state holiday. What a concept. Encouraging civic engagement and working to protect voter access to free and fair elections. Also, since 2019, well before the Dobbs decision and Prop 3, introduced legislation to create the Reproductive Health Act, which would have effectively codified Roe in statute here in Michigan, protecting women's access to health care. Also introduced legislation to eliminate the tampon tax, the sales tax on feminine hygiene products, ensuring that this is just one piece of those things that chips away, particularly for lower income women and girls. This is something that you need. This is a medically necessary product. So the fact that these products were taxed we needed to level the playing field. So similar legislation did pass and was signed into law by Governor Whitmer last year. Also introduced legislation to make Indigenous Peoples Day a state holiday to recognize, especially here in Michigan, the impact and history of the Indigenous peoples throughout our state and throughout the country. Also introduced legislation for safe storage of firearms, requiring that firearms be properly secured by their owners to prevent accidental injury or death when there may be minors in the home, or preventing them from getting into the wrong hands. If it is yours and you are a responsible gun owner, we all have to make sure that they stay out of the hands of people who should not have them. And then throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we really pivoted to make sure that we were introducing and championing legislation that would not only help many of our small businesses and survive, but also fighting for worker protections as we all went through this unprecedented moment together. Something that you may still take advantage of today. We introduced legislation allowing bars and restaurants to sell beer, wine, and mixed spirits drinks for consumption via curbside or delivery. Cocktails to go, very popular. And legislation has recently been introduced to make that permanent, which is fantastic. I know that for me, that is something I have taken advantage of. Sometimes you want to eat at home, but you just want a really good margarita. And it is a simple new revenue stream for restaurants that certainly isn't going to solve everything. But restaurants that I talked to said that for those who did take advantage of it, it was great. And we're glad to see that it is moving on. Also introduced legislation to ensure that gig workers, self-employed workers, and contract workers are eligible for unemployment benefits. So these are all pieces of legislation that I've introduced over the first term. If you're wondering what happened to these are all great ideas. Unfortunately, over our first term over 4 years as a member of the minority party, and especially as somebody who flipped a district from one party to the other party when I got elected for the first time, none of my bills ever got a hearing, which is really, really frustrating and was very eye-opening for us to learn how to be effective, especially in this climate of very divisive and obstructionist politics. But these are all things that you could expect that we will be reintroducing in the next year or the next term. And with new majorities and new leadership, hopefully many of these good ideas will move forward. And if you've got feedback or ideas, we would, of course, love to hear from you. So if we weren't able to move legislation, what can we do? One thing that I'm really, really proud of is that we consistently advocated for each of the 8 cities that we have represented in the 13th Senate District for the past 4 years in the budgeting process, making sure that we are your voice in budget negotiations. And we were able to bring down millions of dollars in total for our local municipalities, which included funding for a Royal Oak Veterans Memorial Project, for expanding Innovation Hills Park in Rochester Hills, for the build and creation of an I-75 sound wall in Troy. We heard from many residents about how, while we all love the new construction of I-75, improving our infrastructure, making sure that the communities are still livable as well, We secured a new crosswalk and crosswalk signal in Clawson for at South Main and 14th. Funding for HVAC improvements for Berkeley's municipal and community buildings. Funding for electric vehicle charging stations in Oakland County and across Michigan, and millions of dollars in investment towards Michigan's mobility future and economic site validation here in Oakland County. So a lot of good successes there. And I'm really, really proud of the process that we established with our municipalities to consistently know what was important to each of our locals that we could fight for in the negotiation process as we move forward. And then district services. This is something that, especially when we saw obstruction in the legislative front, we wanted to make sure that more than anything else, that never stopped us from putting our constituents first. And I'm really, really proud of my entire team. They're heroic. They pivoted for every change that we threw at them, and we had a lot of great work to back it up. We held over 65 in-person and virtual coffee hours and precinct potlucks throughout the district. Since 2019, we held 10 town halls and roundtable discussions on things like the election, the 2020 census. These were really large scale issue focused town halls. We had 32 quarterly meetings with our mayors, managers, and police and fire chiefs throughout our district, again, improving the collaboration with our local municipalities. Attended and provided updates at over 40 city council and commission meetings throughout the district, sent over 55 email newsletters, which if you haven't signed up for them, I highly encourage you to do so. They are informative and very helpful. And we even find ourselves going back to search for things that we might have talked about in those newsletters in the past as bills are reintroduced and issues come back up. And we sent 8 hard copy tangible mailers to constituents across the district. And one thing that I know before I got into office that was really frustrating for me was seeing legislators use these mailers in a way that felt like campaigning. It was really just talking about them and what they were doing and what was important to them. We really wanted to make sure that our mailers were informative, they were useful, and it wasn't just about me talking about what was important to me, but we provided resources on COVID-19, on addressing your heating costs, on senior supports, especially throughout the pandemic, education about voting. And we heard really good feedback from a lot of you. Some people who reached out and said how much that they appreciated these mailers, others who said that they received them and did not know what party I was. And that wasn't a negative, that there was something refreshing about the fact that it didn't seem like there was a bias. This was just information. So really proud of those. And then, I don't want to close out the term without mentioning what a strange and inspiring year this has been. Most people watching by now will recall a speech that I gave back in April here after a colleague accused me with no basis in reality of being a groomer and a pedophile. And I gave a speech on the Senate floor that has really made an impact. And it has just been really, really moving to me and my entire team and so many people to realize that even in our most frustrating moments, when we've gone through a pandemic, when we've really struggled with election fraud and the continued lies about the 2020 election and all of the hate and vitriol, that you can still make an impact, and you can do that in a real way. On Twitter alone, it has now been viewed more than 15.6 million times, and that is not counting how many times it's been written up in newspapers and magazines and on TV. And I've been really, really grateful to be invited to travel and to speak about this moment that we're in and the power of using our voices. So thank you to everybody who reached out and engaged with me on that, who shared your own stories and how much this meant. You are never going to know how much that your response reinvigorated me in a way that I didn't know was possible, because it's been really hard. So thank you for that. And it is something that I am always committed to, is using my voice where I can, in a way that hopefully speaks for others and not just for myself. So thank you. It's not the most important thing, but sometimes it happens. Received a number of awards and nominations over the first term, including Crane's 40 Under 40 Award. This year, I was the Michigan Works Legislator of the Year for our work on workforce development and talent. And MERS, which is a Lansing-based publication that covers the Capitol. I've been the Democratic Legislator of the Year nominee 3 times. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride, which I say jokingly, but I really, really appreciate, especially, being somebody who we've really worked hard to find ways to be effective, even when we haven't been able to move legislation. So I just really, really appreciate being nominated for those things. All right. That was a lot of talking on my end, but because this is our last live stream of the year and the term, I asked everybody on my team to also share their proudest moments, either of the past year or the last term. So I'm going to bring on my Chief of Staff, Molly Korn, who's been with me since day one, to share. We're going to bounce back and forth and share everybody's proudest moments. So Molly, do you want to start with yours?
Yeah, well, I feel like with the speech in April, it just kind of, you said it reinvigorated you. I think that was a lot of the experience for a lot of our team. So one of the most exciting parts of the last year for me was it was like a couple hours after you'd given your speech and we had finally gotten it up online, and Hillary Clinton retweeted it. And at that point, I think we were out of the office because it was like later in that day, and I had called you and I just like started screaming into the phone. And we just like couldn't believe it. And just like watching the numbers of like how many more views it was getting after she retweeted it, and just like, like calling each other every 5 minutes and like, did you see this person did it? Did you see this? So that was just like it was like a horrible day that turned into like the craziest, but also like most exciting part of the year. So yeah, that was exciting.
Yeah. And for everybody who is watching or anybody watching, I often get asked, like, did you expect your speech would have this impact, which is the most ridiculous question. And the answer is, of course not.
Right.
And I was also really nervous giving it. Right. Because this is a really hard moment, and I didn't know how it was going to be received at all. So that was, I think less important are the views and the virality of it. But, realizing that a tiny state legislative office is on Hillary Clinton's radar that was a surreal moment for sure. Okay, Elizabeth, who is our constituent services assistant, she focuses on casework. She shared 2 stories that I want to share. One thing that she's really proud of is that and I really want to say she, because she did so much of the hard work on this, assisted in facilitating getting a blind and homeless constituent into their new living situation. This was a really, really hard situation, and she coordinated with many local organizations to make that happen. And that's a lot of the work that happens in these offices, that happens behind the scenes, that most people don't know about. Many of these situations are really heartbreaking. And when we're actually able to make a difference, you may never hear about it. It's never going to be in the media or a story or go out in our newsletters, but that was a really proud moment for me, and grateful for Elizabeth for that work. Another story she shared was a tax preparer called us on a Friday to say that there was an error with their client's tax audit, which in a warrant of a levy that resulted in their business account being drained to $0, which is not the kind of news you want to see on a Friday. So Elizabeth worked very quickly with Treasury, State Treasury, and by Monday, the levy was reversed so that this business in our district could make their payroll and work with Treasury towards a resolution. So again, just absolutely heroic work that happens behind the scenes to keep people's lives moving. And I think that's what a lot of people just may not know about what your state legislator and your state legislature's office can do, is just help out when we can, when things go wrong or navigating state departments. I will be the first to say it doesn't always work. That is one of the most frustrating things for us, is when we really want to find a solution and we can't. But those moments like these 2, when it does, makes it all worthwhile. All right, Molly, do you want to read Lisa's?
Yeah, so Lisa is our scheduler and has also been a point person for fielding phone calls in our office and kind of directing them to the correct people to respond. This was also a post speech time. She was the one fielding. I mean, we got thousands of phone calls and voicemails after that speech. And I know, like, you've talked about this before, but we were really nervous about, I mean, are we going to get, and we got some threats, but like overwhelmingly, it was the outpouring was just so positive. And so Lisa shared that those first 2 or 3 weeks after the speech, just all of those phone calls of people from not only all over the country, all over the world, calling and in tears, thanking you for the speech and for the power of your words. And Lisa's crying when people are crying. It's just, it was such an emotionally charged and kind of beautiful moment in time, I think, for our office. So that was Lisa's high point as well.
I'm very proud that she views that as a high point, because the other reality of it is we are a very, very small office. So Lisa pretty much single-handedly for a while was sifting through thousands of voicemails and emails. So if anybody has sent either me or our office a note or a letter, and if you haven't heard back, please know that we have seen and listened to and read all of them. There aren't that many of us, but it really was, there's overwhelm in a bad way and there's overwhelm in a good way. And this was a really pleasant surprise for me, because as things started to blow up, I was gearing myself up for the worst and for you guys. And there certainly still is some of that, but I think the ratio of positivity to negativity changed, which was wonderful. All right. Last but not least, if you are a regular watcher of our live streams, you are used to seeing Liz here to do Q&A. Liz is, I believe, on a plane right now. But she shared that her highlight, again, related to this kind of wild and crazy year that we've had, is shortly after the speech in April, I was invited to appear on Pod Save America in a live taping in Chicago at the theater that they perform Hamilton at, which is wild to me. But we turned it into a team trip. So we are a small office. We brought our entire team up. We made it a team night out. And Liz pointed that out as the highlight of her time here, which is awesome. I was glad that we were able to make that a team event. And I distinctly remember, I walk out and it's kind of terrifying. Like, I've never done anything like that before. And I just see Liz in the audience and I was waiting for her to heckle me. Luckily, everybody was supportive. Okay, cool. Molly, I'm going to turn you off for a moment and run through the rest of what we got on tap, and then we'll come back for Q&A. So reminder, anybody watching, if you have a question, feel free to go ahead and type it in the comments section. Please include your name if that is not immediately apparent by your username, and also what city you live in, so we can make sure to prioritize our constituents. Not that we don't love and support you if you're not our constituent, but we've got to make sure that we are representing those who put me into office in the first place. So this is our last live stream. So for the past 4 years, I have proudly represented the 13th Senate District, which includes Berkeley, Birmingham, Bloomfield Hills, Clawson, Rochester, Rochester Hills, Royal Oak, and Troy. I have said that in order more times than I could possibly imagine. But these districts change. So that is my district, and I am your state senator if you live in one of those cities through the end of the year. For the next 2 weeks, you're stuck with me. But January 1st, the new districts go into effect. So the districts that were created by the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission that we used in this year's 2022 midterms election start in January 1st. So beginning then, I will now be representing Senate District 8, which includes Birmingham, Clawson, Berkeley, Beverly Hills, Royal Oak, Huntington Woods, Pleasant Ridge, Ferndale, Oak Park, Royal Oak Township, and Detroit. And in Detroit, it is along Woodward Avenue, north of Highland Park, west to Greenfield, and south. So it's a pretty significant portion of North and Northwest Detroit. So sadly, if you are a resident of Rochester, Rochester Hills, Troy, or Bloomfield Hills, this is our last live stream together. I just really want to take a moment and just say thank you. Whether you voted for me or not, this has been just an experience that I never thought would happen. I had never planned to run for office. I Googled how to run for office and we figured it out as we went. And everybody who was engaged with us over the past 4 years, whether you agreed with me or not, I'm just really grateful for your participation and for your engagement, because it has made me a much better legislator, and also I hope a better person. So thank you. And we won't be that far. So yeah, January 1st, new districts. Okay, finally, it is the holidays. We wanted to let everybody know about a few fun holiday events coming up if you are in the area. Hanukkah on Ice is happening December 20th at Suburban Ice Rochester at 5:45 p.m. Wild Lights at the Detroit Zoo is going on now through January 8th on select weeknights and most Sundays from 5 to 9. If you've never been to Wild Lights at the Zoo, it is so fun. So fun. Really beautiful. They do a really amazing job. And the way the Detroit Zoo is kind of set up, you can do the whole lap of the zoo or kind of cut through halfway, which was great last year when I had a small baby who was, just shy of one, and we took her and she had a great time. So this year, maybe we will take her to see all of it because she will almost be 2. And then last but certainly not least on our list is the Big Bright Light Show in Rochester. You know this well if you've driven through downtown Rochester with all of the lights along all of the buildings in downtown Rochester. It's just really, really beautiful. The show will be aglow every night from 5 p.m. to midnight through January 3rd. And more than anything, please be safe. Have fun this holiday season with your friends and family. And with that, bring Molly back on and open it up for Q&A. Any question this time around?
Yes, we have a couple questions. Sharon from Birmingham on Facebook had asked about prohibiting firearms in the Capitol building.
Oh, yeah. So to anybody watching who may not know this, in Michigan, firearms are allowed in our Capitol building. That is not true of every state capitol around the country. And we saw on April 30th of 2020 an armed protest at our state capitol that made news all around the world, with heavily armed men in full tactical gear with AR-15s up in our Senate gallery, really kind of taunting us. And what I think is ironic about that is right across the street, I had to go to Lansing City Hall to pay some city taxes, and you have to go through a metal detector, and there are no firearms allowed in that building. So, the truth about the Capitol is this is a public space. There are frequently 4th grade school trips, families, kids present in the building. And I think that it is, common sense to make sure that this is a safe place for everybody. There is currently a rule in the Michigan State Capitol that signs are not allowed because the Capitol Commission has ruled that they do not want the paint to get chipped, but guns are. The Capitol Commission changed their rules probably about a year ago to prohibit open carry of firearms in the state capitol, but that actually doesn't make it any safer because it means somebody might be carrying a weapon in a bag and we just can't see it. So yes, Sharon, to answer your question, there is a lot of common sense gun violence and gun safety legislation that we have introduced dozens of bills over the past 4 years, and look forward to making the Capitol a safe place for everybody. In the same way that if you go to the U.S. Capitol, you cannot bring in AR-15s and firearms because that is a safe space for everybody who comes into that building.
April from Facebook said or asked about any updates on reform for auto no fault for post 2019 survivors.
Yep. April, thank you for the question. We addressed this at the top of the live stream, but in case you missed it, there has been legislation and legislative packages that we have introduced, I have introduced, along with my colleagues to reform auto no-fault reform, to do a number of things to make it easier to access in-home care, to make sure that we are not retroactively interpreting the law and punishing people who've already paid into a system and deserve the care that they paid for. So yes, I would imagine in the new term with new majorities that we will be able to move these bills forward. It was really frustrating over this past year, especially, that there was bipartisan support for these bills, but the chair of the Insurance and Banking Committee and the Senate Majority Leader refused to take these bills up. So new leadership means a new opportunity to finally get it done.
Yes, and actually April just followed up and asked if you'd be able to set up a meeting in the new district.
April, absolutely. We are going through, as everybody is. So this is just a good kind of right now, as districts change over. We've got a lot of new members coming in. There's a lot of staffing changes. People are moving. Everything is exciting. And so I would just say, if you could kindly give us a few weeks into January. But absolutely, as we get into the new term, we will be doing a number of things, proactively setting up meetings, going all around the district, introducing myself, reintroducing myself to constituents that I already know, introducing myself to new people. But if you ever want to reach out to set up a meeting, feel free to contact our office. If you search Mallory McMorrow, it's really hard to say our office email. It's senmcmorrow@senate.michigan.gov. It's really hard to give that email address over the phone. But if you look it up on our website and send us a general email, we will make sure to get it in our meeting requests for the new year. And absolutely looking forward to it.
Great. Got a question from LinkedIn. Roger asked, do you think the urban shredder might be a viable EV option for Michigan?
Oh my God, that's a deep cut. Okay, so Roger, hey, nobody else knows what this is or what we're talking about. So Roger and I, way back, were at Dynacraft, who was a licensee for Mattel for Hot Wheels, and we co-developed an urban shredder, which was a $400 ride-on toy. It was awesome. I have my name on a patent. Roger, based on how it went, I don't think it's probably going to be a good EV solution for Michigan. I rode our adult prototypes and probably fell off them in the parking lot a few times. So for safety reasons, in my new official capacity, I'm probably going to say no. But thank you for asking. I really, man, I want one. I was bummed I didn't get one before in its short-lived time.
I had no idea what that was referring to. So.
Just asking questions blind.
Now you know.
Now you know, everybody. Fun fact, I have my name on a patent for developing a ride-on toy. That was really cool, and it kicked out in the back, and they had skid plates on it that would make fire. So cool.
Sounds
safety. Safety first.
Okay. Let's see. Rick from Chicago on YouTube asked, how do you feel about term limits for Congress and SCOTUS?
Oh, man. Okay. So term limits. So here's what happens in Michigan. Michigan, in the legislature, we have had some of the strictest term limits in the country. So in the state house, for example, you were eligible to serve 3 2-year terms, so 6 years in total in the state house. And in the state senate, you're eligible to serve 2 4-year terms. This was passed into law a while ago. And while on its face, term limits are very popular and they totally make sense. We want to get fresh ideas in. We don't want people to be career politicians or kind of outlive their time in office. But what has happened in Michigan is, because the term limits are so strict, it has really created the situation where there's so much churn of legislators, that people are not developing institutional knowledge. There's less willingness to work together or put forward long-term solutions, things like road funding, things like school funding, because if you're only in office for 6 years, it's really risky to talk about, revenue issues. So a lot of people just don't. And it has given the lobbyists in Michigan way more power and influence than they would have otherwise, because they tend to be around a lot longer than legislators. So we have implemented now, Prop 1 was on our ballot this year, which amended our term limits in Michigan to allow any legislator to serve a total of 12 years. But rather than restricting so tightly in either chamber, you can serve it in one chamber, another chamber, or both. You can serve it however you want it. So I'm hopeful that that will create changes. So I think as we talk about term limits for Congress or SCOTUS, there are term limits on the Michigan Supreme Court, which I think is useful. So I think that it should absolutely be a conversation that we have about the Supreme Court, especially as we see people being appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court for lifetime appointments, and they are very young right now. Thinking about how long somebody should serve on the court is a conversation we absolutely have to have. But I would encourage people, as we have those conversations, look and learn from Michigan, and let's find a good, happy medium where at every level we are allowing people to become experts in their space when they are elected to serve in office. We're not giving too much power to lobbyists, but we are also making sure that we don't have people in office or on the bench far longer than they should be.
Wonderful. And lastly here, Dylan from YouTube is from Pennsylvania. And he asked, what is something you are looking forward to getting done in the new legislative session?
I love this question so much. Okay, so when a reporter asked me this the first time, my answer, which revealed just how frustrating it's been for the past 4 years, was I am looking forward to passing a bill, any bill on anything I've ever introduced. I'm looking forward to so much. It's really hard to wrap your head around what an opportunity we have in front of us, because this is a Democratic trifecta in the state of Michigan. And more than just party control, it is an opportunity to show how we can lead in a new way, with the governor, the state Senate, the state House, all working together to put up legislation. So there are so many things, from expanding childcare to gun violence prevention reform to repealing the 1931 abortion ban and recognizing how many people came out and voted for Prop 3 and finally getting that law off the books, to repealing the pension tax, expanding the earned income tax credit, just so many things. But more than anything else, I am looking forward to just the opportunity to actually do this work and to work together and to get things done, and hopefully prove in a state like Michigan that this is what it looks like when we are no longer in really divisive, obstructionist government that's taken over in far too many places.
That's what we've got.
Yay. All right. Well, Molly, I will let you go and I will close it out.
Okay.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging with us. For everybody that's been with us since the beginning, thank you for the opportunity, for always pushing me to be better. For everybody who found me back in April and has tuned into these things, it's just, it's surreal, and it's something I don't take for granted. And I'm just really grateful that you care and that you are following along. So thanks. I hope you get a lot of well-deserved time with friends and family and loved ones. Like I said, this is our last live stream of the term. We will be kind of going quiet for a little while as we transition into our new office, the office of the 8th Senate District, and staff up and get ready for committee assignments and what the new year looks like. The new session will begin on January 11th of 2023, and then we will see you back there then. Happy holidays, everybody, and have a very happy and safe new year.